The bullet that shattered the window of the Mercantile missed Louisa Emerson's head by 3 inches, and she didn't even flinch anymore because fear had worn itself threadbare in her heart years ago. It was May of 1878 in Roswell, New Mexico Territory, and violence had become as ordinary as the dust that coated everything in this forsaken town. She simply stepped away from the broken glass, continued counting the remaining tins of peaches on the shelf, and wrote the number in her ledger with a steady hand that betrayed nothing of the emptiness inside her. The shooting outside ended as abruptly as it had started. Someone would be dead or dying in the street, and by sundown, the undertaker would have another pine box to build. Louisa had stopped asking who or why. She had stopped asking for much of anything 3 years ago when her husband Thomas had ridden out to check the fence line on their small ranch and never came back. The search party found him 2 days later, shot in the back, his pockets turned out, his horse gone. They never found who did it. Justice was a word people spoke about in Roswell, but it rarely showed its face. She was 24 now, though she felt decades older. The ranch had been sold to pay Thomas's debts, debts she hadn't even known existed until after he was buried. The beautiful future they had planned together, the children they would raise, the life they would build, all of it had died with him in that dusty arroyo. Now she lived in a cramped room above the Mercantile, worked 6 days a week for Mr. Henderson, and tried not to think about how the rest of her life would be more of the same until she was too old to be useful, and then she would simply cease to matter at all. Happy endings were for fairy tales and foolish girls. Louisa had been a foolish girl once. She wasn't anymore. The bell above the Mercantile door chimed, and she looked up from her ledger to see a man she didn't recognize stepping inside. That alone was unusual. Roswell wasn't large, maybe 200 souls on a good day, and she knew most of them by sight if not by name. This man was a stranger, and something about him made her actually look, really look, for the first time in longer than she could remember. He was tall, probably in his late 20s, with dark hair that needed cutting and eyes that were an unusual shade of gray-blue, like storm clouds over the mountains. He wore dusty traveling clothes, a gun belt slung low on his hips, and carried himself with a kind of quiet awareness that suggested he had seen his share of trouble. But it was his face that caught her attention. There was a gentleness there that seemed at odds with the hard lines life had carved into it, a suggestion that whoever he had been before the West had gotten hold of him, some part of that person still survived. "Afternoon," he said, his voice deep and courteous. "I'm looking for supplies. Trail rations, ammunition, grain for 2 horses. "We have everything you need," Louisa replied, her voice automatically falling into the professional tone she used with customers. "The grain is out back. I can have our boy load it for you. The rest is here inside." He nodded and began moving through the store, selecting items with the efficiency of someone who had done this many times before. Louisa returned to her ledger, determined not to stare, but she found her gaze drifting back to him despite her best intentions. He moved with purpose but without hurry, and there was something almost peaceful about his presence, as if he carried his own sense of calm with him. "You work here long?" he asked suddenly, glancing over at her. 3 years, Louisa said. "You like it?" The question surprised her. People didn't usually ask her opinion about anything. "It's work," she said carefully. "It's honest." He nodded as if she had said something profound instead of stating the obvious. "That matters," he said. "Honest work. My name is Owen York, by the way, just got into town today. Louisa Emerson." She wasn't sure why she gave him her full name. "Are you passing through or staying?" "Staying, I think. Bought the old Macready place about 5 miles north of here." Heard it came with water rights and decent grazing land. Louisa's eyebrows rose despite herself. The Macready ranch had sat empty for over a year after old man Macready died without heirs. It was good land, or it had been once, but it would take serious work to bring it back. "That's ambitious," she said. "The place has been neglected." "I noticed," Owen said with a slight smile. "But I'm not afraid of work. Been looking for a place to settle for a while now. Something about this area feels right." She wanted to tell him he was making a mistake, that Roswell was a place where dreams came to die, that he should take his money and his ambitions somewhere else. But it wasn't her place to say such things to a stranger, so she simply wrote down his purchases in her ledger and calculated the total. He paid without complaint, counted out the coins with work-roughened hands, and thanked her with genuine courtesy. As he gathered his supplies, he paused near the door. "That window," he said, nodding toward the broken glass. "You should get that fixed before nightfall. Not safe leaving it open like that." "I know," Louisa said. "But glass is expensive, and Mr. Henderson won't pay for it until he gets back from Santa Fe next week." Owen frowned slightly, glanced at the window, then back at her. "I could fix it temporarily, board it up at least. I have lumber in my wagon." "That's not necessary," Louisa said quickly. The last thing she needed was to feel indebted to anyone, especially a stranger with kind eyes who might expect something in return. "Probably not necessary," Owen agreed. "But it's the right thing to do. Won't take more than 20 minutes. You shouldn't have to work in a building with a hole in the wall." Before she could protest further, he had already stepped back outside. Louisa stood behind the counter, uncertain and annoyed at her uncertainty. She had learned to be suspicious of kindness because it usually came with a price. But 20 minutes later, when Owen had efficiently boarded up the broken window and refused any payment beyond the coffee she reluctantly offered him, she found herself even more unsettled. "Why did you do that?" she asked, as he prepared to leave for the second time. Owen looked at her with those calm gray-blue eyes. "Because you looked like you could use one less thing to worry about," he said simply. "And because in a town where people shoot through windows in the middle of the day, seems like folks should look out for each other when they can." Then he was gone, loading his supplies into a sturdy wagon hitched to two good-looking horses, and Louisa was left standing in the mercantile with the strangest feeling spreading through her chest. It took her a moment to identify it, because she hadn't felt it in so long. It was hope, tiny and fragile as a candle flame in the wind, and she immediately tried to snuff it out. Hope was dangerous. Hope was what got you hurt. But over the following days, she found her thoughts returning to Owen York more often than she liked. She told herself it was simple curiosity about the stranger who had bought the Macready place, nothing more. When she heard people in town talking about him, she listened despite herself. He was working hard on the ranch, they said. He had hired a few local men to help with repairs. He came into town once a week for supplies, always polite, always paid his debts, kept to himself mostly but was friendly enough when approached. The next time Louisa saw him was 2 weeks later when he came back to the mercantile. She had just finished helping Mrs. Patterson select fabric for a new dress when Owen walked in, his clothes dusty from work but his manner as courteous as before. "Miss Emerson," he greeted her. "Good to see you again. The window looks like it got properly fixed." "Mr. Henderson had it replaced when he returned," Louisa said. "Thank you again for boarding it up. That was kind of you." Owen shrugged as if kindness were nothing remarkable. "How have you been?" It was such a simple question, the kind people asked without expecting a real answer. But something about the way he looked at her with genuine interest made Louisa pause before giving her automatic response. "I've been well enough," she said carefully. "And you? How is the ranch coming along?" Slowly, Owen admitted, but progress is progress. The main house is livable now, which is an improvement over sleeping in the barn. Got the well working again yesterday, which felt like a victory. That is a victory, Louisa agreed. Despite herself, she felt a small smile tugging at her lips. Clean water makes all the difference. You know ranching? Owen asked. I did once. My husband and I had a small place northeast of here. Before. She didn't elaborate, and Owen didn't push, which she appreciated. If you ever want to see what I'm doing with the old Macready place, you'd be welcome to visit, Owen said. I'm there most days, and I'd value your opinion on some things. Someone who knows the area and knows ranching. Louisa's first instinct was to refuse. Accepting his invitation felt like opening a door she had sealed shut for good reason. But another part of her, a part she had thought was dead, whispered that maybe one visit wouldn't hurt. Maybe she could help him avoid some of the mistakes she and Thomas had made. Maybe it would be good to see a ranch again, to remember what it felt like to build something. Maybe, she heard herself say, if Mr. Henderson can spare me on a Sunday afternoon. Owen's face lit up with a smile that transformed his features, making him look younger and less careworn. That would be wonderful. This Sunday, if it suits you. I could pick you up in my wagon around 1 o'clock. She should say no. She should make an excuse. Instead, she found herself nodding. 1 o'clock would be fine. The rest of the week passed in a strange blur. Louisa tried to focus on her work. Tried not to think about Sunday, tried not to wonder what she was doing agreeing to visit a man she barely knew. But Saturday night found her washing her best dress, the dark blue one with the small white flowers that Thomas had always said brought out her eyes, and she couldn't pretend anymore that this was just a friendly visit to offer ranching advice. Sunday afternoon arrived with cloudless skies, and a warm breeze that carried the scent of sage and creosote. Louisa was waiting outside the mercantile when Owen pulled up in his wagon at precisely 1 o'clock. He had clearly made an effort, too. His clothes were clean, his hair was neatly combed, and he helped her into the wagon with careful courtesy. The ride to the ranch took about 40 minutes. They talked easily, more easily than Louisa had talked to anyone in years. Owen told her about his past, how he had grown up in Texas, worked as a cowboy on various ranches, and saved his money for years with the dream of having his own place. He had never married, had been too busy working and moving around, but now that he had land, he wanted to build something permanent. "What about you?" Owen asked as they turned onto the rough track leading to his property. "You said you had a ranch before. What happened?" Louisa took a breath. She rarely spoke about Thomas, about the life that had been stolen from her, but something about Owen's quiet presence made the words come easier. "My husband was killed 3 years ago, shot in the back by someone who wanted his horse and whatever money he was carrying, which wasn't much. We had debts I didn't know about. I had to sell the ranch to pay them. Now I work for Mr. Henderson and try not to think too much about the past." Owen was silent for a moment, then said quietly, "I'm sorry. That's a heavy load to carry." "It was," Louisa admitted. "I think I'm more angry than sad now, if I'm honest. Angry that we didn't get the life we planned. Angry that there was no justice. Angry that I had to start over with nothing." She surprised herself with the honesty. She hadn't admitted those feelings to anyone, barely even to herself. "Anger makes sense," Owen said. "What was done to you wasn't right. Your husband didn't deserve to die that way, and you didn't deserve to lose everything you had built together." The simple validation of her feelings, the acknowledgement that her anger was justified, made Louisa's throat tighten with unexpected emotion. "Thank you for saying that," she managed. They arrived at the ranch, and Louisa's practiced eye immediately began assessing what she saw. The main house was small but solidly built, with a new roof that Owen had clearly just finished. The barn was in better shape than the house, with fresh paint on the doors and new fencing around the corrals. The land itself rolled away in gentle hills covered with grama grass and dotted with piñon pines, and she could see the water tank glinting in the afternoon sun. "It's good land," she said as Owen helped her down from the wagon. "You chose well." "I hope so," Owen said. "But it's good to hear it from someone who knows. Would you like to look around?" They spent the next 2 hours walking the property. Owen showed her the improvements he had made, the plans he had for expanding the herd, the garden spot near the house where he wanted to plant vegetables. Louisa found herself genuinely interested, offering suggestions based on her own experience, pointing out things he might not have noticed. It felt good to be useful in this way, to be talking about something that mattered beyond the daily routine of the mercantile. When they finally returned to the house, Owen invited her inside for cool water from the well. The interior was sparse but clean, with simple furniture and an orderliness that spoke of a man who took care with his surroundings. There were books on a shelf near the fireplace which surprised and pleased Louisa. "You read," she observed. "When I have time," Owen said, "though lately there's been more working than reading. Do you?" "I used to love it," Louisa said. "I haven't in a long time." Somehow it felt frivolous after Thomas died, like I didn't deserve to enjoy anything. Owen handed her a tin cup of cool water and leaned against the kitchen counter, studying her with those thoughtful eyes. "You know that's not true, right? That you deserve to enjoy things. That you deserve to be happy." Louisa looked down at the cup in her hands. "I gave up on happy endings a long time ago," she said quietly. "They're for stories, not real life." "Maybe," Owen said, "or maybe you just haven't found yours yet." She looked up at him then, surprised by the gentle conviction in his voice. There was something in his expression, a warmth and sincerity that made her heart beat faster. This was dangerous territory. She should leave, should thank him for the afternoon and maintain the safe distance she had built around herself. But she didn't want to. For the first time in 3 years, she didn't want to hide behind her walls. "Why did you invite me here?" Louisa asked. "Really?" Owen set down his own cup and took a step closer, though he maintained a respectful distance. "Because from the moment I saw you in that mercantile, standing there like nothing could touch you even though a bullet had just come through the window, I wanted to know you. Because you looked like the strongest, saddest person I had ever seen, and I thought maybe if I could make you smile, really smile, it might be the best thing I ever accomplished." Louisa's breath caught. No one had spoken to her like that in so long. No one had seen past her defenses to the hurt underneath. "I don't know if I remember how to do this," she whispered. "How to let someone in, how to trust that it won't all fall apart." "I know," Owen said softly. "I'm not asking you to trust me right away. I'm just asking if I can try. If I can show you that some stories do get happy endings, that some cowboys do ride in and change everything for the better. Starting today, if you'll let me." Tears pricked Louisa's eyes and she blinked them back. She had thought herself too damaged for this, too hardened by loss. But standing in Owen's simple kitchen, looking into his honest face, she felt something crack open inside her, something that had been frozen solid for 3 long years. "I don't want to get hurt again," she said, her voice barely above a whisper. "I can't promise you won't ever hurt," Owen said. "Life doesn't work that way. But I can promise I'll never hurt you on purpose. I can promise I'll work every day to make sure you know you matter, that you're valued, that your happiness is important to me. I can promise that if you give me a chance, I'll do everything in my power to rewrite the ending of your story into something beautiful." Louisa felt a tear slip down her cheek, then another. Owen reached out slowly, giving her time to pull away if she wanted, and gently wiped them away with his thumb. His touch was warm and careful, and it made her realize how starved she had been for gentleness, for connection, for someone to see her not as the tragic widow or the reliable store clerk, but as Louisa, a woman who still had dreams buried deep beneath the sorrow. "I'm scared," she admitted. "Me too," Owen said, "but I think you're worth being scared for." She didn't remember deciding to move, but suddenly she was closer to him, and his arms were around her, and she was crying against his chest while he held her with a steadiness that made her feel safe for the first time since Thomas died. He didn't try to shush her or tell her everything was fine. He just held her and let her cry, one hand gently stroking her back, and somehow that made all the difference. When the tears finally subsided, Louisa pulled back slightly, embarrassed by her outburst. "I'm sorry," she said. "I don't usually fall apart like that." "Don't apologize," Owen said firmly. "Sometimes falling apart is exactly what we need to do so we can put ourselves back together stronger." She looked up at him, this man she barely knew but who somehow felt familiar, safe, right. "This is crazy," she said. "I've only known you for 2 weeks." "Time doesn't always matter," Owen said. "Sometimes you just know. I knew the first time I saw you that you were going to be important to me. I know that probably sounds foolish." "It doesn't," Louisa said. "Or maybe it does, but I don't care. Because I felt something too, and I've been fighting it because I was terrified of what it meant." "And now?" Owen asked quietly. "Now I think maybe I'm tired of being terrified. Maybe I'm ready to try again, to let someone in. To believe that maybe, just maybe, there could be a happy ending after all." Owen's smile was like sunrise after a long night. "Can I court you properly then? Take you to the church social next month? Come visit you on Sunday afternoons? Show you that I'm serious about this, about us?" "Yes," Louisa said, and the word felt like stepping off a cliff and discovering she could fly. "Yes, you can court me." He kissed her then, soft and sweet and full of promise, and Louisa felt the final walls around her heart begin to crumble. This was what she had given up on, what she had thought she would never feel again. But Owen was rewriting her story with every gentle touch, every kind word, every moment of patient understanding. The ride back to town, as the sun began to set, was filled with a different kind of conversation. They talked about their hopes and dreams, the kind of life they each wanted to build. Owen told her about his vision for the ranch, how he wanted it to be a place of peace and prosperity. Louisa found herself sharing dreams she had buried, about having a real home again, about maybe having children someday, about building something that would last. "I want all of that with you," Owen said as they pulled up outside the mercantile. "I know it's fast, but I also know my own heart. I'm not a man who plays games or says things I don't mean. I want a future with you, Louisa. I want to give you the happy ending you deserve." "I want that too," Louisa said. "But let's take it one day at a time. Let's do this right." "One day at a time," Owen agreed. "Starting with tomorrow." "Can I take you to dinner at the hotel restaurant?" "I'd like that," Louisa said. He helped her down from the wagon and walked her to the door of the mercantile, ever the gentleman. "Thank you for today," he said. "For trusting me enough to visit, for letting me in even though you were scared." "Thank you for being patient," Louisa replied. "For seeing past what I show everyone else, for making me believe in possibilities again." They said goodnight reluctantly, both of them aware that something significant had shifted between them, something that could not be undone. As Louisa climbed the stairs to her small room above the store, she felt lighter than she had in years. The grief was still there, the memory of Thomas and the life they had lost, but it no longer felt like the only story she would ever have. Owen was offering her a new chapter, a new beginning, and she was finally ready to accept it. The next several weeks passed in a blur of quiet courtship. True to his word, Owen came to town regularly, always making time to see Louisa. They had dinner at the hotel, took walks around town in the evening, sat together at church on Sundays. He was patient and respectful, never pushing her faster than she was ready to go, but also making his intentions clear. He wanted to marry her, to build a life together, and he was willing to wait until she was ready. The people of Roswell noticed, of course. In a town that small, nothing went unnoticed. Most were happy for Louisa, glad to see her emerging from the shadow of grief. A few, like Mrs. Patterson, worried that she was moving too fast, that she barely knew this man. But Louisa found she didn't care what anyone else thought. For the first time in years, she was making a choice based on what she wanted, not what was safe or expected. Mr. Henderson, for his part, was surprisingly supportive. "You deserve some happiness, Louisa," he told her one afternoon when Owen came by the store. "That York fellow seems like a good man. Hard-working, honest, treats you right from what I can see. Don't let what happened before stop you from living again." As spring turned to summer, Owen's ranch began to truly take shape. The house was expanded with an additional room, the barn was fully restored, and he had purchased a small herd of cattle that were thriving on the good grass. Louisa helped when she could, spending her Sundays at the ranch working alongside Owen. They made a good team, each compensating for the other's weaknesses, building something together that was stronger than what either could have created alone. One Sunday in late June, after a long day of work, they sat on the porch of the ranch house watching the sun set over the mountains. Louisa was leaning against Owen's side, comfortable and content in a way she had forgotten was possible. "I love you," Owen said quietly. "I know we haven't said it yet, but I need you to know. I love you, Louisa. You're the best thing that's ever happened to me." Louisa's heart swelled with emotion. She had felt it growing between them, this deep affection and connection, but hearing him say the words made it real in a way it hadn't been before. "I love you too," she said. "I didn't think I could feel this way again, but I do. You've given me back something I thought I'd lost forever." Owen turned to face her, taking both her hands in his. "Marry me," he said. "I know it's only been a few months, but I'm sure. I want you to be my wife. I want to wake up next to you every morning for the rest of my life. I want to build this ranch with you, raise a family with you, grow old with you. Marry me, Louisa." She looked into his eyes, those steady gray-blue eyes that had seen her at her most vulnerable and loved her anyway. There was no doubt in her heart, no hesitation. This man had taken the broken pieces of her life and helped her forge them into something new and beautiful. He had rewritten her story from tragedy to hope, from loneliness to love. "Yes," she said. "Yes, I'll marry you." Owen's whoop of joy echoed across the ranch, and then he was spinning her around, both of them laughing with the pure happiness of it. When he finally set her down, he kissed her with a passion that made her dizzy, and Louisa kissed him back with everything she had, pouring 3 years of suppressed emotion and newfound love into that single moment. They were married in August in the small church in Roswell. It was a simple ceremony, nothing like the elaborate wedding Louisa had dreamed of as a girl, but it was perfect in its own way. Owen wore his best suit and couldn't stop smiling. Louisa wore a new dress in pale lavender that she and Mrs. Patterson had made together, and she carried wildflowers from the ranch. When the minister pronounced them husband and wife, and Owen kissed her in front of the whole town, Louisa felt like her heart might burst with joy. The reception was held at the hotel, with food and dancing and well wishes from the community. Even Mr. Henderson had closed the mercantile for the day to attend, giving Louisa a generous wedding gift of household goods to help set up her new home. As Louisa danced with her new husband, she caught sight of her reflection in one of the hotel windows and barely recognized herself. The sad, defeated woman who had counted peaches in the mercantile, while bullets flew, had been replaced by someone radiant with happiness and hope. Their first months of marriage were an adjustment, as all marriages are, but they were good months. Louisa gave her notice at the mercantile and moved to the ranch permanently. She threw herself into making the house a home, planting a garden, fixing up the interior, adding small touches of beauty and comfort. Owen worked the ranch with dedication and skill, and together they built something that was truly theirs. There were challenges, of course. A drought in September tested them, and they had to make hard decisions about the herd. In October, some of Owen's cattle were rustled, and he spent a tense week tracking them down with the help of the sheriff, eventually recovering most of them. Through it all, Louisa stood by his side and he by hers, and they learned that together they could weather any storm. As their first winter as husband and wife approached, Louisa discovered she was pregnant. She had suspected for a few weeks but wanted to be certain before she told Owen. When she finally shared the news one evening after dinner, he picked her up and spun her around despite her laughing protests about being careful. "We're going to have a baby," he kept saying, wonder in his voice. "We're going to be parents." "We are," Louisa confirmed, her hand resting on her still flat stomach. "Are you ready for this?" "I'm ready for anything as long as I have you," Owen said, pulling her close. "This is everything I wanted, everything I dreamed of. A home, a wife I adore, and now a child on the way. You've made me the happiest man alive." Louisa felt tears of joy prick her eyes. "You gave me back my life," she said. "When I met you, I was just going through the motions, waiting for time to pass. You showed me that I could be happy again, that I could have the life I thought I'd lost forever. You rewrote my ending, Owen. You gave me a fairy tale when I had stopped believing in them." The pregnancy progressed smoothly through the winter and into the spring. Owen was attentive and protective, insisting that Louisa not overwork herself, though she continued to help with the ranch as much as she was able. They prepared a nursery in the additional room Owen had built onto the house, painting it a cheerful yellow and building a cradle from oak wood. In April of 1879, after a labor that lasted through the night, Louisa gave birth to a healthy baby boy. They named him James Thomas York, honoring Louisa's first husband while giving their son his own identity. When Owen held his son for the first time, tears streaming down his face, Louisa felt a completeness she had never imagined possible. Her life had been shattered once, but it had been rebuilt into something even more precious. The years that followed were full and rich. Little James grew into a sturdy, curious boy with his father's gray-blue eyes and his mother's determination. When he was 2, Louisa gave birth to twin girls, Emma and Sarah, who filled the house with laughter and chaos. Owen expanded the ranch, hiring help as needed, and it became one of the most prosperous in the area. Louisa stayed involved in the community, helping newer widows in town who were struggling as she once had. She remembered what it felt like to be lost in grief, and she made it her mission to show other women that there could be life after loss, that happy endings were possible even after the worst heartbreak. Many commented on how much she had changed from the sad, closed-off woman who had worked in the mercantile, and Louisa would smile and tell them that she had simply needed the right person to help her find herself again. On their 5th wedding anniversary, Owen and Louisa took a rare evening alone, leaving the children with Mrs. Patterson. They rode out to a favorite spot on the ranch, a small rise that overlooked the valley, and watched the sunset together as they had done so many times. "Do you remember that first day?" Owen asked, his arm around Louisa's waist. "When I came into the mercantile and you looked like you wanted to be anywhere else in the world." "I remember," Louisa said. I also remember thinking you were too good to be true, that there had to be some catch. I was so determined not to hope for anything. And now, Owen asked, now I know that you were exactly what you seemed to be. A good man who saw someone in pain and decided to do something about it. You didn't just offer me love, Owen. You offered me a future when I thought mine was over. You took the ending I had written for myself, full of loneliness and resignation, and you rewrote it into something beautiful. Owen kissed her temple gently. You did the same for me, you know. I was just drifting before I met you, working and saving but never really living. You gave me purpose. You gave me a family. You gave me a reason to build something that would last. They sat in comfortable silence for a while, watching the sky turn from gold to pink to deep purple. The ranch spread out below them, their home glowing with lamplight in the gathering dusk. Somewhere inside, their children were probably giving poor Mrs. Patterson a run for her money, and the thought made Louisa smile. I'm grateful, she said quietly. Every single day I'm grateful. For you, for our children, for this life we've built. I'm grateful that I was brave enough to let you in, that I didn't let fear win. I'm grateful you gave me a chance, Owen replied. That you trusted me with your heart even though it had been broken. That you believed me when I said I wanted to give you a happy ending. As stars began to appear in the darkening sky, they rode back to the house together, ready to step back into the beautiful chaos of their family life. The sound of children's laughter greeted them as they approached, and Louisa felt a surge of love so powerful, it almost took her breath away. The years continued to pass, bringing new challenges and new joys. When James was 8, he started helping his father with the ranch work, showing a natural aptitude for handling livestock. The twins grew into spirited young girls who kept everyone on their toes. In 1884, Louisa gave birth to another son, Daniel, who completed their family. The ranch prospered beyond their initial dreams. Owen's reputation for honest dealing and quality cattle spread throughout the territory, and they became known as one of the most reliable operations in the area. They added more land, built new structures, and hired several permanent hands who became like extended family. But success never changed who they were at their core. Owen remained the kind, steady man who had boarded up a broken window for a stranger, and Louisa never forgot what it felt like to have nothing, to be alone and grieving. They were generous with their neighbors, fair with their employees, and active in making Roswell a better community for everyone. As their children grew, Louisa made sure they understood the value of resilience and second chances. She told them about their father, Thomas, making sure they knew he had been a good man whose life was cut short by senseless violence. But she also told them about how their father, Owen, had shown her that life could be beautiful again, that love could bloom even in the hardest soil, that endings could be rewritten. The most important thing, she told them one evening as they all sat around the dinner table, is to never give up on the possibility of happiness. Life will knock you down sometimes. It will break your heart and test your strength. But if you stay open to love, if you're brave enough to try again when it seems impossible, amazing things can happen. Your father showed me that. Owen reached across the table and took her hand, his eyes full of the same love and devotion they had held on their wedding day. Your mother showed me something too, he said to the children. She showed me that the strongest people are the ones who keep going even when they're broken inside. She had every reason to close herself off from the world, but she didn't. She was brave enough to take a chance on a cowboy with dusty boots and big dreams, and that changed both our lives forever. James, now a teenager, looked at his parents with the beginning awareness of young adulthood. You two really love each other, don't you? He said, as if seeing them clearly for the first time. We really do, Owen confirmed. And we always will. When their 25th wedding anniversary arrived in 1903, their children organized a celebration that brought together friends and neighbors from all over the region. The ranch had grown into a significant operation, now spanning several thousand acres. James, at 24, was managing much of the daily work alongside his father. The twins, at 21, were both married to good men from neighboring ranches. Young Daniel, at 19, was preparing to leave for university, the first in the family to pursue higher education. As Louisa looked around at the gathering, at the life they had built, and the family they had raised, she was struck by how far she had come from that sad, hopeless woman in the mercantile. That day when Owen had walked in, when he had shown simple kindness by fixing a broken window, had truly been the beginning of a new story. "What are you thinking about?" Owen asked, coming up beside her with 2 glasses of punch. "About that day we met," Louisa said, accepting the glass with a smile. "About how I had given up on happy endings, about how you walked in and decided to rewrite mine." "We rewrote it together," Owen corrected gently. "I just offered the possibility. You had the courage to accept it." "We make a good team," Louisa said, leaning against his shoulder in the familiar, comfortable way of long marriage. "The best team," Owen agreed. As the celebration continued around them, they slipped away for a moment of privacy, walking hand in hand to their favorite spot overlooking the valley. The land was green from recent rains, and their cattle dotted the hills in peaceful grazing. The house they had built together stood solid and welcoming, filled with the sounds of family and friendship. "You have any regrets?" Owen asked suddenly. "About how your life turned out?" Louisa considered the question seriously. "I regret that Thomas died the way he did," she said honestly. "I regret that he never got to live the life we planned, but I don't regret where I ended up. I don't regret you, us, this family. I think maybe we can honor the past while also embracing the present. Both things can be true." Owen nodded. "That's wisdom right there. I'm proud of you, Louisa. Proud of the life you've built from the ashes of loss. Proud of the mother you've been to our children. Proud to call you my wife." "And I'm proud to be your wife," Louisa said. "You showed me that cowboys aren't just in stories, that real heroes exist. You rode into my life when I needed saving, not from danger but from myself, from the walls I had built and the hope I had abandoned. You saved me, Owen." "We saved each other," Owen said. "That's what love does. It takes 2 broken people and makes them whole together." They kissed as the sun set over their land, over the life they had built together, over the happy ending that had seemed impossible but had come true anyway. Behind them, the sounds of celebration continued, their family and friends honoring a love that had started with a simple act of kindness and grown into something extraordinary. The years that followed their 25th anniversary were quieter but no less sweet. Owen and Louisa gradually stepped back from the daily operations of the ranch, turning over more responsibility to James and his new wife, Catherine. The twins visited regularly with their growing families, and Daniel returned from university with big plans to modernize some of the ranch operations, which Owen supported even though it meant changes to the way they had always done things. Louisa became a grandmother 6 times over, and she treasured each grandchild with the fierce love of someone who understood how precious family was. She told them stories of the old days, of Roswell when it was smaller and wilder, of their grandfather's kindness and their grandmother's resilience. She wanted them to know that they came from strength, from love that had overcome loss, from second chances that had been embraced rather than feared. In the spring of 1910, on a mild afternoon full of birdsong and sunshine, Louisa and Owen celebrated their 32nd wedding anniversary. They were in their 50s now, showing the wear of years of hard work and good living, but the love between them had only deepened with time. They sat on the porch of the ranch house, watching their grandchildren play in the yard while James and Catherine managed the afternoon feeding. It was peaceful and perfect, exactly the kind of scene Louisa had dreamed of in her darkest days but never believed she would actually experience. "I've been thinking," Owen said, breaking the comfortable silence, "about how things work out, about how one decision, one moment can change everything." "What do you mean?" Louisa asked. "I mean, what if I hadn't stopped to fix that window? What if I had just bought my supplies and left? What if you had turned me down when I asked to court you? So many small moments that could have gone differently, and we might never have had all this." Louisa reached over and took his hand, lacing their fingers together. "But you did stop. You did fix the window, and I did say yes. Maybe it was fate, maybe it was luck, or maybe it was just two people who recognized something in each other, something worth fighting for." "I saw you standing there in that mercantile," Owen said, his voice full of memory, "looking so strong and so sad at the same time, and I knew I had to try. I knew I might fail, that you might send me away, but I had to at least offer you the possibility of something better." "I'm so glad you did," Louisa said softly. "You gave me back my life. You gave me this beautiful family, this home, this future. You took the story I thought was over and gave it the most wonderful second act anyone could ask for." They sat in silence for a while, hands clasped, watching the sun make patterns on the porch floor. Around them, the ranch hummed with life and purpose. This was their legacy, not just the land and the cattle and the buildings, but the love they had built, the family they had raised, the example they had set of resilience and hope and second chances. "You know what the best part is?" Louisa said eventually. "What's that?" "We get to keep writing the story. Every day, every moment, we're still adding to it. The ending we created together just keeps getting better." Owen smiled and pulled her closer. "Here's to many more chapters then. With you, I want them all." As evening fell over the ranch, their family gathered for dinner as they did every Sunday. The table was crowded and loud, full of love and laughter and the kind of contentment that comes from belonging. Louisa looked around at all of it, at the faces of her children and grandchildren, at Owen at the head of the table, and felt a gratitude so profound it brought tears to her eyes. This was the happy ending she had given up on. This was the fairy tale she had stopped believing in. And it was all real, all hers, all because a cowboy with kind eyes had walked into a mercantile one day and decided that a sad woman deserved better. He had rewritten her ending starting that very day, and the story he had written was more beautiful than anything she could have imagined. The story of Louisa and Owen York became something of a legend in Roswell. People spoke of it as proof that love could bloom even in the hardest circumstances, that happy endings were possible if you were brave enough to try again. Years after they were gone, their descendants would tell the tale of how their grandmother, broken by loss, had been saved by their grandfather's quiet kindness, and how together they had built something that lasted for generations. But on that evening in 1910, with their family around them and their life stretching out in peaceful contentment, Louisa and Owen weren't thinking about legends or legacies. They were simply grateful for each moment, for each day they had together, for the love that had transformed both their lives. Outside, the New Mexico sunset painted the sky in shades of gold and crimson. Inside, surrounded by love and warmth and the fruits of their shared labor, Louisa and Owen held hands beneath the table and knew, without needing to say it, that they had gotten their happy ending after all. The cowboy had indeed rewritten the story, and the ending was everything it should be. Full of love, full of life, full of the kind of contentment that comes from facing darkness together and choosing light. And so their story ended not with tragedy or loss, but with the simple, profound joy of two people who had found each other at exactly the right moment, who had been brave enough to try again, and who had built a love that would echo through time as a testament to the power of second chances and the enduring strength of the human heart.